A's Hall of Famer Dave Stewart.
I'm,
Stu, how are you?
I'm good, bro. Shoot, it was a challenge, man. I'm a Safari guy. I had to download Chrome.
Well, Shooty and I were talking about it. We're looking forward to hearing your stories, helping out the minor leaguers in the A's system. Have you started doing that already, going to talk to the future A's around the farm system?
Yeah, I was in the DR about 2 weeks ago, and then spent another week in Midland, Texas. That was a week ago. This week, I've actually been here in Arizona working with one of their pitching prospects, just working and tweaking a few things to get him back on track so he can get back to Las Vegas.
Stu, you've done a little bit of everything in the game, and this is not really new to you, but on a full-time capacity, tell me about the gratitude that you're feeling, getting a chance to just put your hand on some of these young kids and inspire them and teach them some of the things that you learned along the way.
It's really starting to feel nice. Like now, as I said, for a whole week, I've been working with a young man here, just tweaking a few things and working on some working mostly with strategy and preparing himself to execute pitches. A reliever that's mid 90s to 100 miles an hour, and just trying to get him on track with locating a pitch that he knows is going to be a strike every time. I had a conversation with, actually put him on the phone with Trevor Hoffman, who they have similarities that they're both were fastball changeup guys. I mean, this kid has a swing and miss changeup. He can throw it 3 times and you'll swing and miss it. But trying to get his fastball command in place has been a difficult piece for him. And so I think we have a plan to get him on track. I appreciate Ed Sprague and Mike McFerrin giving me the opportunity to work with this kid to get him on track. And I think once he's ready to go, he's suffering from a little bit of a back problem right now, but once he's ready to go, I think he's going to be on track to finish out this year in a good place.
Well, the Dave Stewart pitching stories are the best, whether it's Sandy Koufax teaching you the forkball, your time as a great pitcher, whether your time as a pitching coach. It's always fun to talk pitching. And all of a sudden, hey, here's Hall of Famer Trevor Hoffman. Talk to this guy. That is just awesome. Stu, when I think about you being down there, teaching guys how to compete and win in the strike zone. We see so many non-competitive pitches, and these pitchers they don't offer at it, and they just sit there and wait. So how important is it for you to get down there and really instill it in these guys? You have to be able to compete in the strike zone.
Well, I think, what the organization is trying to do at this level with these kids, and once again, that starts with Ed Sprague, who is over the minor league system. Mike McFerrin is in his first year as the pitching coordinator, but you've got some great pitching coaches each team. Jim Gott is at Stockton. You've got Javi Guerra is at AA. Paul Abbott is at AAA, and we've got with our AA club, we've got God dog it, I'm drawing a blank. Longtime Giant pitcher. It'll come to me. That's what happens when you get old. But but we've got real good philosophies here that we're trying to run through these kids about first pitch and throwing first pitch strikes and pounding the strike zone and taking your chances. We've had an opportunity to look at other organizations and what they do, and the success that they're having through their minor league system and all the way to the big leagues. And so, for me, the key is having these kids understand that your best is always going to be better than whoever you're facing, and instilling that and driving that home. But pitching is also feeling and understanding what you're feeling when you throw a certain pitch, because if you can feel it, then you can recreate it. And if you can recreate it, then you can repeat it. And it will happen time and time again. So, I'm working with strategy with these kids and a plan, not just at the ballpark, but before you get to the ballpark. And then once you get to the park, you get in the game, then you can execute pitches, you can compete. And that's been the biggest thing that I've been trying to drive home with these kids.
Stu, I sit back sometimes and I see the Diamondbacks play the Braves, or I see the A's play the Mets, and all these teams I've worked for, and it gets me excited just to think about certain things. We're in this series with the Dodgers and the A's, and the memories that you have and the success that you have with these two story franchises. How's it feel like being Dave Stewart today and watching these two teams go at each other?
I've got beautiful, beautiful memories and things that I kept. I'm from both sides. I came up in the Dodgers organization. My first year was 1975. You know, the first people I met when I came into the organization, I remember Roy Campanella like it was yesterday, coming up in his wheelchair and having an opportunity to meet him. And then Don Newcomb was right behind him, and Maury Wills and Duke Snyder, and we had that group of people for me to meet as a rookie. Jim Gilliam was our first base coach at that time, and Tommy Davis was in spring training, and I mean, and obviously Sandy Koufax was there, Don Drysdale. I got a chance to sit with these guys and associate with these guys and really learn what baseball, the Dodger way, was about. And when we're in spring training as kids, going through the fundamentals and the repetition of doing drills time and time and time again, and questioning why we were doing it, to eventually find out why we were, when those things actually took place in the game, and it wasn't a second thought to be where we were supposed to be when something took place in the game. And so I learned how to play fundamentally the game of baseball, to pitch baseball the Dodger way. And those things carried me through in my major league career. I finally got an opportunity to pitch in my hometown with the Oakland A's. And with that organization, having an opportunity to play for Tony La Russa and Dave Duncan, and having ownership with Walter Haas, who reminded me of Walter O'Malley, it was like things had turned all the way around. And I started with the Dodgers, and I'm with the Oakland A's in my hometown, playing baseball, winning championships, learning about being a good teammate. You got to remember, Shooty, when I was a Dodger and a Ranger and a Philly, and in those organizations, I was just part of an organization. When I came to the A's, I had an opportunity to learn what it was like to be a leader in an organization, and to be able to have an influence on players that were coming into the organization, having them understand that this is how we play baseball here in Oakland, which was very similar to some of the lessons I learned with the Dodgers. And so I was able to take some of the things that I'd learned, implement those things in a leadership role with the A's. And we had some great teammates. Yesterday, someone asked me who my best teammate was, and they immediately said, I bet it was Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson, my best childhood friend. Carney Lansford was my best teammate, because Carney Lansford was the captain of our team. He was the glue to our team. He was the guy that didn't have a problem walking up to Tony La Russa and saying, hey, you're playing favoritism to Jose Canseco, and it's not rubbing well with the rest of our teammates, and you got to do something different. You have to set a different example for these guys. That's the guy that Carney Lansford was. Carney Lansford was the guy when Jose Canseco was not doing things well defensively and just resting on his offensive talents. He would walk up to Jose and poke him in his chest and say, you got to do better defensively, or you can't play out there for us. Carney Lansford was one of the best teammates that I've ever had in baseball. Like I said, Ricky Henderson, we go back a long time as childhood friends, and he was a great teammate. But when it came to leadership, true leadership, and having players understand that this is the way we play, there was nobody better than Carney Lansford.
Yeah, programming note, Carney Lansford will join us on the program tomorrow, A's Hall of Famer. And speaking of your guys' run, one of the coolest things always doing TV with you when you were back home was seeing that World Series MVP trophy. And tomorrow's going to be A's and the Giants in San Francisco. You think about the disappointment of '88 against the Dodgers, and then you were not losing in 1989. No matter what happened, you guys were going to win it. You were by far the best team in baseball. You got to be the World Series MVP. Just take us back kind of down memory lane, just how incredible being a kid from the Bay Area, you grew up watching the Giants. Now you're pitching for the A's. You end up being the World Series MVP. I mean, it was just magical.
It was. It really was. It's crazy, you know, when you hear the real story from Sandy Alderson. I almost didn't end up in A. You know, Wes Stock and Jackie Moore weren't really, as we would say, they weren't really feeling Dave Stewart when he came to Baltimore to throw that bullpen, and really didn't want to sign me. If it wasn't the love that Sandy Alderson had for Bill LaJoy as a general manager at that time, that everybody held in the regards. I guess if we looked at general managers today, you'd probably look at Dave Dombrowski as the guy that everybody says, if Dave Dombrowski likes him, then I better like him. Well, Bill LaJoy was that guy. And when Sandy talked to my agent says, hey, you know, how's it look? And Sandy says, well, our guys didn't like him. We're not going to sign him. And he says, well, Sandy asked my agent, well, what opportunities does he have? And he says, well, the Detroit Tigers like him and probably will sign him if you guys don't. And, you know, he's liked in Toronto, and the White Sox like him, and we've got some teams that he can go to. And then Sandy said, back up. He says, Detroit Tigers, Bill LaJoy? And my agent at that time, actually my agent for my career was Tony Attanasio. And Tony says, yeah, Bill LaJoy loves this guy, and Bill will sign him if you guys don't. And Sandy came back and he says, well, if Bill LaJoy likes him, I don't care what those guys down there think, we're going to sign him. So I ended up getting signed, and you know the story. We put together a team, you know, with Tony and Dunk coming in and the coaching staff that we put together. You know, in '86 we were not so good. '87 we almost played 500 baseball. I think we did play 500. '88 we make the World Series, and you know it was disappointing losing to the Dodgers. I know for me personally, I really wanted to beat them badly. You know, being a part of that organization, getting traded, and I think I told you this story. The day I got traded, I was out at Lake Castaic fishing, and listening to the radio while I was fishing, me and my cousin, and I was out there fishing, and then I hear on the news that the Dodgers have made a trade to bolster up their playoff run. Dave Stewart and Ricky Wright have been traded for Rick Honeycutt. Man, nobody called me, man. I didn't get a call. I'm sitting out the lake. I'm sitting with my cousin. I said, wait a minute, man. I thought I just heard I got traded. He said, yeah, man. And my cousin said, yeah. He said, sounds like you going to Texas. I said, oh, Lord. I threw my gear. I threw up my fishing gear, everything in the lake. I was so pissed off. So got to the ballpark, man. My stuff was packed already. So I was ready to beat the Dodgers in '88, and unfortunately, things went the way that they did. But we learned a great lesson from that, and we came back in the '89 season, started in spring training with goals that we had set. We wanted to score 800 runs. You know, our pitching staff, something that Tony said was important for us if we were going to be in the rotation is to be accountable every fifth day. And then, you know, play hard between the lines. You get to the ballpark. When you get between those lines, you play hard for them. And then '89 turned out to be a good season for us. We ended up beating the Giants, which, you know, that was kind of bittersweet. And the fact that we won the World Series, but we couldn't celebrate it because of the earthquake here in the Bay Area. And you know, that was really a sad occasion, but it was a great feeling to be able to accomplish that. In the Bay Area, the town that I grew up in front of relatives and family and friends. And that was a beautiful thing. And then, you know, Cincinnati in 1990, I really don't want to talk about getting swept by those guys. One of my neighbors is Eric Davis here in Arizona. And he tells the story all the time. He can't help but tell the story that how he was waiting on that fastball to take me deep. I told him, shoot, bro, I wish we get in the old timers game and we're playing the Reds again. I know what to do with the first pitch this time.
You know, Stu, we were having a conversation the other day because the A's faced this situation with Aaron Judge and Ohtani. And Tony's one of those guys right away said, I put 4 fingers up and I wouldn't let Aaron Judge beat us. You look at the A's young team like now, these young pitchers that you're building for the future for that you want to be in playoffs and you're going to have to face guys like that, Ohtani. I want to know your opinion at this point in the year. How would you have approached that? I mean, you got a chance to win the game, or you got a chance to learn something from your mistake if you make one. How do you approach that as a pitcher, person in development, general manager? I mean, you've done it all. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down on you. So if you had to make that decision with your pitchers, how would you handle that situation with this club right now?
Well, with this club, there's one guy that, in my opinion, has earned the right and has earned the respect to have the opportunity when he's on the pitching mound, and that's J.P. Sears. He's had back-to-back seasons, and he's not missed a start. He's been the guy that's been the number one guy, in my opinion, for this organization over the last 3 years. And so if J.P. Sears is on the mound, I know what he brings when he comes. I know he competes. This year, to this point, has been the best year that he's had as an Oakland A, and that means that he's learned from seasons past. And so J.P. Sears get an opportunity to do what he wants to out there for me, and I'm going to give him that right. And if I'm going to make a mistake, it's going to be with him. Nothing against this organization, because they're young, as you said. They've got guys that are learning their way in this organization. So, with some of the other guys, I might have to think about it. At this point, Severino, though he's shown great. I wouldn't even know, bravado, I guess, is the word I would use. I've seen him a couple of times when we get into the later innings, and normally we might take a guy out of the game, and we've allowed him the opportunity to continue to pitch on. And so he might get that opportunity for me. But, at the same time, I've watched him through the course of this year and to this point, and I'm sure he's going to be better at this. He has a blow-up inning. There's been an inning just about in all of his starts where he's had a blow-up, and the opposition puts up a crooked number. So in his particular case, I might look at the situation. He may get that opportunity early, whereas he may not get that opportunity in the fifth or sixth inning for me, is how I would look at it with the Severino. And those would be probably the only two guys that I might allow that opportunity. The rest of the staff, if I got to put the four fingers up, I'll do that. But J.P. Sears and Severino, those are two guys that I probably have to look and say, hey, I might give you that right.
We just had one of our first checkpoints of the season. We were giving out quarterly grades, and you look at the Athletics at 22 and 21, still down at Dodger Stadium, looking to take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers before they open up against San Francisco tomorrow here in the city. So far, what do you think about the A's, their start? Best record on the road in all of baseball. Jacob Wilson is starting to become a household name in our game. So what are your first impressions?
Well, Jacob Wilson is a household name in the game. Believe me, there are a lot of people. He's not a secret now. You can believe that. His name is circulating around the league as a guy who figures out a way to put the meat on the ball. He's just doing a tremendous job displaying power. He's been clutch all season long. So he's not a secret any longer. I think that the league was very, very clear that offensively this team comes to play every day. And that's a reflection on the guy that is managing this team. And there's no wonder that they gave the contract that they did to Koch. This team is playing like their manager, a tough guy. He was a tough guy. He was a competitor. He was a no-quit guy, gave you everything that he had on that baseball field. And he was very, very knowledgeable about what he did as a player. And that's reflected on this team on a day-to-day basis. These guys are never out of a baseball game. More cases than not, they're figuring out ways to get an edge on you. I mean, if there was anything that I would wish for this team is that they play better at home. They've been a great team on the road. They haven't played as well as they should at home. And if they do believe, in fact, in their insides that they're playing against the same circumstances that other teams are when they come to Sacramento, then they should be able to play much better at home than they have. And I think that's going to happen for them. The pitching staff, the starting rotation is rounding itself out. And the bullpen is rounding itself out as well. I mean, they've had the injury bug, that's the one thing when the season started. When I looked at the team, I said, God dang it, they're not going to be able to afford to do what the Yankees do and what the Mets do, which is have a second group of guys that when your first group gets hurt, that can fill in, you not miss a beat. But so far, they played gutsies. They've endured the injuries early. Nobody talks about the fact that they've had injuries in their starting rotation and that they've had injuries in their bullpen and that they've been mixing and matching guys in and out of the starting rotation and out of the bullpen, which is the key to winning baseballs. Pitching and defense is always going to win games for you. But they've done well. But once again, I point the finger back to Mark Kotsay and his leadership and his coaching staff and how they're keeping these guys on point and having them understand that they can win no matter what the circumstance and they can beat anybody with the circumstances. And they go out and they play hard every day.
Doesn't get any better than that.
Not at all,
Stu,
bro.
it's so great that you're such a big part of this organization. It's great that you're such a big part of the future of this organization with these kids. And we've talked about when you go down there, what it means, like to think of you and Sandy Koufax back in the day. Well, that's now these kids thinking about you. So always great to have you on A's Cast Live. We'll be thinking about you this weekend as we're talking about the 1989 World Series. Best to you, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
I'll talk to you guys. Good to see you both. Babitt.
Love you, man.
See you.